glomerulus. Okay?
Inside of what?
Okay, this structure inside the renal corpuscle is made up of two parts. Okay, we have another model we'll go to in a minute, look in more detail. But there's two parts. The inside capillary structure is called the glomerulus. The outside covering of it is called the Bowman's capsule. And fluid is going to filter out of the glomerulus and out of the blood and enter the Bowman's capsule. So it's going to leave behind the red blood cells, but much of the fluid in the plasma is going to come out and enter this renal tubule nephron structure. We'll get that in a minute. Okay. So again, the nephron starts with the Bowman's capsule. Okay. Then the fluid enters the Bowman's capsule and it's going to flow into the top of the tubules. And the first part of the tubules is called the proximal convoluted tubules. So the tube bends back and forth, it becomes convoluted. It's closer proximal to the Bowman's capsule, so it's called the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay? The fluid then passes down through the loop, which is called the loop of Henle. There's two sides. There's a descending side and an ascending side. Okay? When we talk about what happens in the physiology, the two sides we'll see have two different functions. Tonight we're just going to talk about the anatomy. The ascending side has this thick and thin part to it. So there's a thin descending and a thick ascending. Okay. Then we have another region, which again is the tubes become convoluted. And it's the distal convoluted tubule, because this end is further away from the Bowman's capsule. In actuality, these two regions are not separate like this. These two convoluted regions are all mixed together. Okay. Now this is just simplifies it so you can follow it on a diagram. Okay, and then the distal convoluted tubule drains into a collecting duct. Okay, and then the collecting ducts go down to the papillary ducts and drain into the calyx, and then finally into the pelvis and into the urethra. Okay. We'll do one more model tonight. We'll look at the Bowman's capsule. So you can see automatically how more complicated the anatomy is, and before we haven't even got into the physiology. Okay. This, when I taught this for the first time, I realized if I had known this when I was in college, I would have ended up being a urologist. This system amazes me. And the way the kidneys work. Okay. The Bowman's capsule. And this kidney is exactly the same in the fish as it is in you. Over all of evolution, from basically no difference in the anatomy of the fish's kidney and your kidney. Okay, so the Bowman's capsule now. So you have coming in, let's follow what you have in the book, I guess is the best way. Afferent arteriole, bringing blood in. Okay, and then you have this complicated capillary network, which is called the glomerulus. Okay, and it has specialized cells on it, called pedicles, which we'll talk about. That control the filtration of the fluid leaving the blood and entering this space to potentially form the urine. Okay. So you have the afferent arteriole, you have the glomerulus, you have the efferent arteriole. Okay. One way you can tell the afferent from the efferent is the afferent is larger in diameter than the efferent. Okay, so you have a large blood vessel coming in, afferent. The blood vessel leaving is smaller in diameter, efferent. Okay. The Bowman's capsule is, so again, the renal corpuscle is two parts, the glomerulus and then the Bowman's capsule. So the glomerulus and then the Bowman's capsule. The inside of the capsule wall is called the parietal layer of the Bowman's capsule. Okay. The cells attached to the surface of the glomerulus are the visceral layer. And just like you had with the lungs, the parietal layer attached to the ribs and visceral layer attached to the surface of the lungs. There's a subcapsular space in between where the fluid is going to be draining into. Okay. The fluid then leaves the Bowman's capsule and it immediately enters the proximal convoluted tubules. There is a structure called the juxtaglomerular apparatus that's associated with the afferent and efferent arterioles, which you can see here on this model. Okay, it's actually an association of the part of the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, so here you had the proximal, went down, came back up in the distal. Distal here associates with the sensory cells in this apparatus. And these cells are able to sense the chemical nature of the urine inside the tube because it's now gone through the nephron. And based on the chemical composition of the urine that's formed, it controls the rate of production of the new urine that's formed. So its kidneys, every nephron self-regulates itself to efficiently produce urine of the correct concentration with this juxtamedullary apparatus. Now this is also the apparatus that makes renin, to start the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system that regulates blood pressure throughout the body. So I think you've all heard how important renal function is to regulation of blood pressure. And we're going to talk a lot about that over the next couple of weeks. Okay. Okay, I think we're going to stop there tonight.